Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where in today's show, we're going to be going over a massive result at the Gtech on Saturday night. Brentford win 3-2 against the Premier League champions Liverpool. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just checked. The game is definitely finished now. It went on forever. At the time, it felt like it was never going to end.
I know. We'll get into all of that. But just remember, before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts around the Liverpool game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Tweet of the week, Dan. There's many, and we've talked about it on the pod before. I'm a massive fan of all of these new Brentford memes. People will have seen them if they're active on Twitter. The STD for Schade, Thiago, and Dango is sensational. There's another one that involves a war criminal from World War II that I think people may or may not have seen as well, with Vitaly Anelt's face plastered onto someone quite famous. And there's also another one with Michael Kayode, which I won't talk about because it's not PG at all or PC at all. But if you've seen the one with Michael Kayode's long throws involved, I think you know what I'm talking about there. But tweet of the week this week, Dan, has to go to the club admin. Whoever's conjured this one up after full time on Saturday night. Brentford tweeted, must have been that unchanged team, talking about Arne Slot's comments around how teams are changing their lineups and stuff like that before they play Liverpool. But yeah, that was a tap-in from Brentford. Over 5 million impressions on that tweet, Dan.
Yeah, and Keith Andrews kind of admitted after the game it was because he played so well against West Ham, he sort of kept it the same. And I've criticised him at times for doing that this season, not looking at each game for what it is, just basing things off what's worked the week before. And I think that's why we ended up playing a back five at Fulham, for example, earlier this season, which I thought was a wrong decision. But you've got to give him credit for this. We were brave. It was a little bit different to West Ham in terms of the out of possession shape, so he didn't keep it exactly the same in that extent. But it's a brave thing to do against a side like Liverpool. Despite their struggles, they always seem to score goals. I think we just accepted that they were going to score, but we caused them so many problems going the other way that we fully deserved to win. I think Keith Andrews is learning. He's got some tactical bits about him. That out of possession shape really worked, and I think he's showing his intelligence as a manager. And although we've seen him be naive at times this season and perhaps not quite get it right, I think that's almost to be expected. But we could look back on this in 4 or 5 years' time and think actually it's worked out because we've hired someone who's got the potential to be a top manager. He just didn't necessarily have the name when we first got him in.
We and just on that kind of his naivety so far this season, we're first to criticize, first to praise as well. But we were kind of chatting just before we started recording about the thing that you get labelled with, and I've been called a happy clapper before, and I'm pretty sure like a lot of people would have been called a happy clapper before for getting excited when we win or anything like that. But you kind of, and it's something I noticed with Thomas Frank at Spurs. Even at the moment with football fans and football fandom, it's kind of like instant success or you should be sacked. And I know that that's not the majority of people saying that in Spurs circles and Brentford circles too. But it does feel like at the moment, in football, at least in general, there's no kind of happy medium between the two. Either you're a happy clapper and you're going to praise the club no matter what, or you're someone that's saying the club's going to go down. It feels like it's one extreme or the other. Whereas I feel like, at least on the pod and in my content I do as well, I'm always quite, you get excited about the wins because that your team has won, but you're also allowed to criticize the team as well. It's like, but other people who are quite black and white with it will either label you as a happy clapper or label you as an idiot for praising the team when it goes right. But again, I just do think if you're, and I'm not saying that we've turned a corner under Keith Andrews, because obviously we're going to talk about the result and the ramifications, but we are, and I don't think you can deny that we are seeing improvement game on game. We're seeing Keith Andrews learn. But if you're someone that has judged the manager after 5 games and thinking that he should be sacked, it annoys me when we win like that. And then you don't hear from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was saying before as well, I think it's, people are a bit anxious. People are a bit scared when it comes to change. We lost not just Thomas Frank, but a lot of key players. The league as a whole, it's not helped us in our feelings, I don't think, because it seems a lot more competitive Premier League this season. You still can't really rule out even Wolves and West Ham improving at some point because they are established Premier League clubs that have been here for years. So there doesn't seem to be like a terrible promoted trio that have come up that we've had in the last couple of years. And it's all happened at kind of a bad time when we're probably at our least stable in terms of turnover. And I think it's to be expected that when you take a risk by hiring someone like Keith Andrews, there are maybe going to be a few teething issues, especially when he has a new team that, were disrupted in pre-season. Keith Andrews admitted that himself. We were terrible on opening day. That didn't make anyone feel any better. Apart from that, we've probably only been actually terrible against Fulham.
Yeah.
Even if we don't like the style of play at times, I've criticised the style of play at times against certain teams. I've criticised the setup against certain teams, but he's showing he's learning, and we've had some really good results, which people don't want to always highlight during that period as well. And we're sitting where we're now, like 11th in the table. So that's a good start. That's on par with Thomas Frank's start last season. He's on Monday, for example, against West Ham, Keith Andrews has started to break some of Thomas Frank's records, and we're in his first 9 league games in terms of obviously number of shots in the first half. I think it was last Monday. So he's doing a lot right, and his ceiling could be really, really high. I do think we're a club that we have dealt with this situation as stable as you possibly could deal with, losing half your best players and manager, and the system is there. The players are there. It's a young team. They're, most of them are going to improve, apart from Jordan Henderson, you'd probably say, out of the players who regularly play. So there's a lot to be positive about. And now we've given ourselves that little bit of breathing space. Hopefully we can express ourselves a little bit more. The players must have a lot of belief now after the last couple of results and the way we've played and the way we've deserved to win those games. I think you're seeing a bit of progression.
I think there is a lot to be positive about. You're absolutely right, but it's okay to criticize. It's just when it's one extreme or the other. I don't get why it has to be extremely positive or extremely negative. Why can't it be somewhere in the middle? Which I think is, and like you just said, the start that we've made to the season, the result we just had on Saturday night. You can't say that Keith Andrews hasn't done a good job. We look decent, and I'm not saying it's a turning point. We could lose against Grimsby tomorrow night. And we'll all be back to square one again. But I think you need to be able to kind of not be either extremely positive or extremely negative. There has to be a happy medium in between.
Yeah, and we do criticise. We have criticised after a couple of games this season. Fulham have not gone on a good run since we played them. They were, we were bad that day.
We were terrible. Yeah.
The last few derbies against Fulham, even under Thomas Frank, haven't felt like derbies. We've not really turned up for any of them. We've not been up for it. There's not been that edge to it. And if we had perhaps played better on that game, if we had perhaps beaten Sunderland, which we should have, I think Keith Andrews should have his penalty taker, which should have been Igor Thiago, and maybe we put that away and win that game. And if we did get better results in those games, you're talking us being in second or third alongside Bournemouth, and that would have been an absolutely outstanding start. Yes, it's not been absolutely outstanding, but it's been good. We're doing well, and we can criticise Keith Andrews when he warrants a bit of criticism, but on the whole, I think he's adapted well. And I think you have to expect, he is come into this job with little experience. You have to expect that he will get things wrong now and again, but he has shown that he is not just stuck to a system. He's willing to adapt. And even within back fours and back fives, like we saw against Liverpool, he can adapt the system and how we look at possession, and he can plan a game plan to beat someone like Liverpool, who are managed by Arne Slot, Premier League champion. And, we 100% deserve to win that game yesterday.
Yeah. And by the way, that loss at Sunderland looks ever more annoying as the weeks go on, considering how well they've done now, beat Chelsea at the weekend. But a lot of people, and I've said it before, but I just think people were watching a different game to what I was watching in Sunderland, because I thought any other day we would have beaten them. And like you mentioned, if we scored the penalty, it's a different story. But I understand that that's kind of what ifs and buts. But anyway, let's talk about the game on Saturday night. We've spoken about it a little bit. Initial thoughts. Let's talk about the lineup first. Stuck with the back four, which I think was a surprise to quite a few people. Were you happy when you saw that? Because we were kind of toing and froing on the last episode of the pod.
As much as Keith Andrews got it wrong at times, like the back five at Fulham, I think one thing you can say is good about him is we don't know. It's hard to tell whether he's going to play a back four or back five, which means the opposition don't know what he's going to do, because it has been quite unpredictable so far, which I think can only be a good thing in the long run. As we know, I'm quite pragmatic. I'm quite cautious about things, so I was a bit scared.
I think the word is boring, Dan. I'm joking.
It's like it's the further away we get from relegation, the more comfortable I feel, and this is the most comfortable I felt this season now. It's obviously brave to go over back four, but like I said, I think we almost expect Liverpool to score no matter how we set up, and he decided to be brave with it. And yes, he changed, a couple of things to maybe counter them a bit better, as opposed to how we normally set up in the back four. But it worked. You've got to be happy with it. Christopher Ayer, I'm not surprised he started again there because he dealt with Bayern really well, and I thought he dealt with Salah really well on the whole here as well. So I don't think you can really complain. You certainly can't complain about the lineup now. He gave a lot of fans as well what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
And it worked well. And, this is clearly his biggest and best win as a Brentford manager. And to be honest, it's one of the days that we'll remember in the Premier League, up there with certain results we got under Thomas Frank as well.
I think that's what you said in your full-time tweet. You said that's maybe as good as we've played even under Thomas Frank in the Premier League era. Did you not? I think you said that.
Yeah. I said, it came to me afterwards, so I put it from my account after. But, and it's remarkable given that we've done it without some of our best players in that Premier League era as well, and so soon into his era, like into Keith Andrews' reign. I know Liverpool had problems going into this, but I still think they'll be all right as the season goes on. They've got so many good attacking players. I thought even if he went ahead, they'd make those changes. They'd overwhelm us. I guess having Isak out meant that they couldn't bring him or Gtech off the bench, which helped us a little bit. But, because even when they lost to United the week before, they just brought so many attackers on and probably should have at least drawn that game in the end, but we dealt with them really well. We even had them bringing Joe Gomez on for, was it Wirtz, with like 10 minutes to go.
No, but the thing is, right, and I know before we talk about the goals, and we will talk about the goals, I mean, the narrative after the game is obviously going to be about Liverpool. And I understand, Liverpool clearly the A side in this game, and given the form that they're on, a lot of people are going to talk about what's going wrong at Liverpool, but the 5-1 win in the Champions League in midweek is forgotten about very quickly. And you brought back down to earth. And I was watching the Gary Neville podcast this morning. They were talking about Liverpool, and there was no mention of how good we were. And I said it in the video that I did after the game. I think that game is more about us being good than Liverpool being poor, because even you mentioned the Man United game. You're watching that Man United game against Liverpool last week, and on any other day, and they don't hit the woodwork 3 or 4 times, Liverpool come away with 3 points. On Saturday night, we deserve to win that game because of how well we played. We were a constant threat.
You thought that a barrage would eventually come, but it never really came. They never created a lot. Salah's goal was brilliant, brilliant finish that most players wouldn't score from that position, or certainly with that type of finish. It just never came. And yes, the game went on forever, and it got a bit nervy towards the end. But that sort of intensity, the way we started the second half, especially after having that knockback just before the break. I thought Liverpool would come out a different team going for it more, but it was more of the same. And you've got to credit us for that and the amount of problems we caused them, especially their fullbacks. And we just caused chaos.
Let's talk about the goals then. We'll start with Kayode's long throw. There's a video from the East Stand that's been doing the rounds on social media of just the length that he gets on his throws. I don't know how he does it. It's a really good finish from Ouattara. It's 8 goals for Brentford since the start of last season from throw-ins. And it was just like, you saw our intentions from the start. And just when you have a weapon like Kayode, who can get it right onto the penalty spot, just use it. And we did. And we went 1-0 up.
I did say we scored from a long throw. That's the one thing I got right at the end of the last episode. That was his best one, wasn't it? I think that went absolute miles. It was not even one that was kind of level with the penalty area. And it's, absolutely brilliant. And, even his general performance, I don't think we've ever had any kind of fullback like him. I'm not sure there's any other fullback like him in the Premier League. So, he's absolutely brilliant. And the power. We're going to score a lot more goals from long throws this season. I know everyone does it now, but we do it by far the best, I think. And
what do you make of all the chat around set pieces this season? Because it feels like it's the talking point. I think I read a stat earlier. It was like 19% of all goals have come from corners. It's the highest amount of percentage from set pieces. I know that we're biased. I don't care because we're quite good at defending them. We're quite good at scoring from them. So obviously, if you're better at it, you're going to have a different viewpoint on it. But everyone's kind of saying that the Premier League's more boring. I don't think so. I think it's still football at the end of the day. But obviously, I would say that we're quite biased given how good we are from set pieces. But what have you made of all that chat around set pieces so far?
I don't think it's more boring. I think if we were to take those throw-ins short, I don't think I'd get much of a thrill out of those. It's weird because at Brentford, it's not actually changed much this season. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Again, we're the team that kind of had the first set piece coach in English football. We're the team that has looked to have brought long throws back in fashion again, it seems. No one does it as good as us still, which is very pleased to see that. Corners, I still think we can do a bit more for. I think Arsenal are the leading light in that regard. But why would you not use these things? Arsenal are nowhere near as good going forward as Liverpool, I don't think. But, it's looking like they might
win the league.
At this early stage, win the league fairly easily if they keep going. You can't see them going on the sort of run that Liverpool are on now in terms of losing 4 or 5 in a row. They're just too solid at the back. They've got enough going forward. They still got plenty of good players, and they're, even if they're not on it, they'll probably score from a corner. Mm-hmm. So, that's the blueprint, really. We all want success at the end of the day. It's about winning games more than anything else. And why wouldn't you make the most of your set pieces when you got them? Yes, it's important to have balance. I thought, I've said about Brentford this season, I thought we've been a bit over-reliant on them at times. But it doesn't mean you should stop using it when you get a throw-in. It just means that you've got to work out other ways to play as well. But yeah, brilliant, I think.
I know. I agree with that last part that you said. If there's a blueprint for success, you may as well be good at it. And I'm not going to talk about Spurs all the time on this podcast, but even Spurs yesterday, they win 3-0, they scored 2 set pieces, and you got Spurs fans saying we're boring to watch, we're playing for set pieces. It's like, what do you mean? Like,
I'm just playing for set pieces. Like, you just get it. I don't get the vibe that Brentford are kind of playing for long throws. Like, you just get a lot of throws every game.
Exactly. We'll talk about the first half, and I think the only chance of note that Liverpool really had was Wirtz when he had that kind of half volley. And I think even like throughout the whole first half, they had a lot of possession, but we just sat in those 2 banks of 4 with Damsgaard close to Thiago, and I think that had a big impact on the game. We'll talk about that too. But we just defended so well. And to only surrender 1 chance of real quality against the Premier League champions who scored 5 in midweek in the Champions League, I thought was really impressive. But I think something that would be remiss of us not to touch on is Yarmo going off for Janelt. And that was a sub that I was a little bit nervy about, but I think it's exactly why Janelt is such a good squad player to have, because he can come on in a game like that and put in a real shift. And to be honest, Yarmo, for everything good that he did against West Ham, I actually thought he was quite poor up until when he came off. But we should give Janelt his flowers because we've criticised him on the pod before. But I thought he came on, Dan, and he put in an absolute shift in midfield.
Yeah, he's always been a good squad player. I don't think we've ever doubted that. I think our only concern was maybe should he always be starting every week in, week out when we have someone like Yarmo with probably a higher ceiling than him. But, he's played so many Premier League games for us. He's an experienced player. I think he's up there with our most Premier League appearances ever. So
I think he's got them. I think he's number 1.
Yeah, so you've got to trust in him. I guess the concern was he hadn't played a lot of football up until he came on. Then after he had an injury, and obviously he doesn't get injured normally very often, and he did well. There's maybe a bit of a concern he might not be able to cover as much ground as Yarmo, which is what he read as well, especially next to someone like Henderson. But he did well. Maybe for the second goal, obviously it was his pass that I think
Aya's got to take the blame for that. Personally.
Yeah, I was just kind of waiting for it.
Yeah.
Whereas it didn't have that much pace on it. But, maybe Janelt could have played a slightly better pass into him. But, that's being quite harsh. Overall, the performance levels didn't drop when he came on the pitch. It was just more of the same. So I hope Yarmo's not out for long, though, because he needs regular time and he's getting that now. And we're seeing him grow. And I hope it's just a precaution.
We'll talk about Kayode in a bit more depth now, because there was a chance for Damsgaard, which comes not long after Kayode kind of steps into midfield, knocks the ball over Wirtz's head, who cost them £130 million, knocks it off to Schade, continues his run. And then Damsgaard kind of has an effort that's really, really well saved by Mamanashvili. But we'll talk about Kayode in a bit more depth because I've got in the running order. I think he doubled his value overnight with that performance because he just plays. He plays with no fear. And do you know the criticism that we leveled at him sort of towards the start of the season is that he needs to take fewer risks, because I think it was against Chelsea when he's like bombing out of right back into midfield and it's one loose touch and we're in trouble. But against Liverpool, he was kind of doing that, but everything just came off for him.
It's risk in the right areas, isn't it? I don't mind him taking risks when he's further forward, but sometimes when he cuts inside in front of the centre backs, I'm not sure that's the right place to start dribbling through players. But I think he'll stamp that out of his game as he gets older. Again, he's not a very experienced player. He's going to be absolutely brilliant, and he's going to be one of the next big players to go because he is everywhere. It's hard for a right back to like really stand out like he does. And he does. He is absolutely everywhere. I think whoever's playing ahead of him needs to cover for him when he goes on those runs. But he does everything well, and he's a good defender as well, which is quite rare. Often you get good attacking fullbacks who maybe can be exposed a little bit defensively, but there's nothing that he's bad at, I would say. And he's got that long throw as well, which is a bonus. I think. Yeah, he's absolutely
the next one. He's the next one we're going to sell for 80 or 70.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You think it's done with Brian and Wissa, but now, you can see Yarmo leaving in a couple of years. You can see Damsgaard going in a year or two. I think the only good thing about Damsgaard, Kayode, Yarmo, who are probably three of the ones on others' radars, is that they've got fairly long-term contracts, I think. So maybe not yet, but you can see it happening. And, maybe we can get bigger fees and the fees will grow. Who's going to become the first £100 million Brentford player? That's the question.
That's a good question. Let us know in the comment section down below. Still so nice to see Dams having his shooting boots on. He had two good efforts in this game. The first one was a really good save from Mamardashvili, and the second one too. Should we talk about their pen? Because there's been quite a bit of discussion around it, and obviously the goal, our second goal, comes shortly after the pen. What are your thoughts on that situation, having watched it back?
It doesn't look like there's any contacts. I mean,
no.
Collins is probably taking a risk by putting his foot out there because, Gak, could easily probably have made contact, but I think Gakpo's anticipating it. Gakpo's going down. Liverpool getting a bit desperate at that point, not playing well, need a goal. So right decision. And I think you got to give the referee some credit for that decision. I know later on he was getting a lot of stick. But yeah, right decision. And I think we went up the other end and scored a couple of minutes later. So yeah, no issues with that. Could it be a yellow for him? Maybe.
I think it's a yellow card. I think it's a yellow. As soon as I saw it, I said, if it's not a pen, and I know that's quite a blanket statement to make. If it's not a pen, then it's a dive. But having watched it back, I think he trips himself up, to be honest. And he's looking for it. He's looking for it.
He's definitely anticipating possible contact. And, but the concern is there will be times where he anticipates contact, and then there is slightly contact after he's already started falling. And he could, get a pen out of that. So I think a lot of people do it these days. It wasn't probably the worst I've ever seen, but I definitely don't think it was a penalty.
You mentioned the goal, and it comes, I think, and this is where I think Keith Andrews actually deserves a lot of credit for his game plan, because Dams, we mentioned at the start that it was kind of a 4-4-2 out of possession, and Damsgaard was playing a lot closer to Thiago. And that is something we've kind of seen, but there is like a wider conversation about Damsgaard that we've not had on the pod yet, about his performances for Denmark and about his performances for Brentford. And I felt like on Saturday, even though, and I tweeted this, I said, even though he's not close to where he was last season, we saw glimpses on Saturday night of the brilliance that he can get to. The pass for Schade is sensational, but I think the difference for me, at least watching it, was that when Thiago actually won one of those 50-50s of the duels that he's now winning on a consistent basis, by the way, Dan, Damsgaard was a lot closer to him. And when you can get him kind of operating in those spaces, and then you have Schade and Ouattara, as soon as Damsgaard has a bit of time on the ball, peeling off in between that half space, in between the right back and the centre halves, or the left back and the centre halves, that's when you've got a recipe for goals. And I'll bring it back to what that clip that's doing the rounds now of Keith Andrews in pre-season, when he says, when we win the ball back on the opposite side, there's going to be so much space. And I just think Keith, I think you saw it by the reaction for when they scored. Keith Andrews runs straight over to the bench and hugs his assistant coaches, because that is something that they've worked on. And it's a goal we've scored at least 3 times now this season. So yeah, happy with that. and the Damsgaard kind of the pass is just the pass is unbelievable.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, even in front of goal, I think Damsgaard's starting to take a few better shots. He scored one for Denmark, didn't he? And obviously that one that Mamadash saved would have been very similar if that had gone in. I think that the times he's not played as well is when we've almost bypassed him a bit and not got the ball into him as much, which I don't think is necessarily on him. But if you get the ball into him, he will create chances and we will score goals. So that front three will always score goals as long as the ball goes into Damsgaard. And I think he's absolutely brilliant at it. And, you want him as high up as possible. You want him in and around Thiago because, Thiago is winning those 50-50s, but, he needs someone near him to lay off to. And it's almost a perfect front four, especially for this type of game against a bigger team who might not really sit back. You've got two wide players willing to run into space, both very quick. You've got kind of a target man up front. Then you've got Damsgaard behind who's able to just pick anyone out. And that is, it's well planned squad building, I think, because they all complement each other really well. And, Damsgaard in that space is unstoppable. And there's not many players like him either, I don't think. Just a few more goals, same as what we always say about him, then he's there, I think, in terms of being able to play for a top level team.
Yeah, 100%. A lot higher up the pitch. I think in the first kind of 6, 7, 8 games of the season, he was just a lot further back. And I think we were a lot deeper compared to what we were against Liverpool last night. At least when we win the ball back and we get that turnover of possession, we seem to be a lot higher up the pitch, or Damsgaard in particular seems to be a lot higher up the pitch. I want to talk about Schade as well, because the first touch is really good and it's off his weaker foot. And I just think, when he goes through on goal, I'm starting to get a bit more confident with the way that he's dispatched his last couple. It does annoy me that Mamadash gets a touch on it and it kind of takes a bit of gloss off the finish because he's got basically half the goal to aim from. But, I think it's recognizing Liverpool's weakness in those transition moments, but it's Schade's anticipation of Damsgaard and that those establishing those connections, which we haven't seen too much of. It seems like we are starting to see them now, which is really nice to see. So shout out to Kevin Schade for that first touch because I thought it was brilliant to kind of take that on the.
I'm not sure the finish is that great though.
No,
I do think the keeper will be a bit disappointed. I think he anticipated it going in the other corner, which is good from Schade in that sense to go for that
kind of weight.
Corner. Yeah. But execution maybe could have been slightly better. But
we'll take it.
Yeah,
we'll take it. It's another goal for Schade. Let's talk about their goal just before half time because I think everyone will be fuming at it. Considering, to be honest, I knew that there'd be a little bit more than 3 minutes because we scored just before the board went up, but it did feel like let's just play until Liverpool score, and it really, really pissed me off.
Yeah, I mean, referee came off with a suspicious injury, let's say, at half time. Just disappeared, didn't he? Never came back. Yeah, he got quite the reception when the whistle went. I thought, as a team, you've got to play to the whistle. You can't be switching off. I think there was a couple of chances for, I think it might have been Vandenberg, and then is it Kayode who maybe could have got the ball clear. It was a bit of a messy goal to concede, which we do have to take responsibility for. We don't want to be conceding something like that. You just got to stay switched on, no matter why. I don't think it's that helpful for the players to be, pointing and screaming at the referee. Just concentrate on your football. We'll do the screaming at the referee. They can do the defending. Yeah, I'd love to see actually how long the ball was in play for in those added time because it did seem like it was going on a bit too long. It's always difficult. How long did our celebrations take and when did we actually kick off? I think it might have been maybe a minute over, but it's unfortunate. And again, you get that feeling that it was so close to being the perfect half. And, I expected Liverpool to come out the second half better at that point. And having just a 1 goal lead as opposed to 2 is a lot more fragile. But we put it behind ourselves well, and we started the second half just as the first finished, and that I think is the more impressive thing. I think so many times you've seen us come out slower and the other team improve second half, but that wasn't the case.
Well, you kind of give me a perfect segue there because just after half time, Damsgaard has another chance, sends Szoboszlai to the shops with just a little jink in and out, and those are the kind of glimpses that we became so accustomed to seeing last season. And then we get awarded the penalty. Thoughts on that? It's boiled the piss of a lot of Liverpool's fans. Having watched it back, I do think it's a pen. In real time, I thought it was harsh. But
it came as a shock to me in the stadium just because they were lining up the free kick, not even anywhere near really the edge. There was a good a good meter probably where they were lining up the free kick from where the foul actually took place. I thought they were checking for something else. And then as we was taking the free kick, I was thinking, I don't remember us actually having a free kick outside the area this season that we could shoot out from. So I was like, I wonder if, I think Dango or someone was standing by. I wonder if he could take a free kick. And then I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, I guess watching it back, it's, really frustrating from Liverpool's point of view because it's not really in an area of a pitch that there was immediate danger. But a foul's a foul. It was on the line, by the letter of the law. It was a foul. Everyone agrees it's a foul. It was just that the dispute was over where it was. So the letter of the law, that is a penalty, although it is very annoying when it's so far on the edge of the box that, it's not almost an immediate danger. It's almost not warranted. It's not the warranted punishment for it to be a penalty, but those are the rules. And I was pleased to get it.
Yeah, Thiago steps up, buries it straight down the middle, which he got a bit of flack for at Forest, but I don't hear anyone giving him flack this season. Or
I think this one looked better. I think this one looked better in that I think he started a little bit and the keeper went a bit early.
Yeah.
So I think he had more, more thought went in behind this one. Not to say he didn't think about the one at Forest. It didn't look as good. I think this one, it looked like the keeper's gone. I'm just going to roll it in this side now.
2-goal cushion restored after that, and I just want to touch on the double block from Sepp and Collins in the second half. And like the pressure was building, but again, there wasn't any clear-cut opportunities. But it just felt like there was something in the air when you got your centre halves fighting to preserve that 2-goal cushion, like Collins and Sepp were. You just felt like that kind of hunger was going to be rewarded. And it didn't let up on our side going forward, I think, and we've touched on it already. I think that's what such an impressive aspect about the performance was that, yes, we defended well, and yes, we were under the cosh at times without surrendering kind of big opportunities, but we were a constant threat going forward as well. Dango had a couple of free headers in that second half that, on another day he buries, especially, I think, the one from a Kayode cross, which is like a really free one. There's another one where he there's like a glancing header that goes just wide, but it was just a complete performance. And obviously, we're going to talk about Salah's goal because that kind of finish, I just think, highlights that he is a phenomenal player, despite being pretty shit throughout the whole 90. He can just pluck that out the air and just so casually just slam it into the top bins. And then you are thinking, oh God, here we go. But we stood tall. We stood tall, and it was just, I think, for what Liverpool are and the threats that they have, for what we've been so far this season, it was the best of us going forward. It was the best of us defensively, and I was faultless despite this kind of mistake towards the end of the game. But just talk us through your emotions for that final. It felt like an hour. It felt like forever, but I think it was about 10 minutes of added time, or 10 or 11 minutes that we played. Yeah. But just talk me through how you felt.
I mean, it always seems to happen towards the end. It just gets a bit messy, doesn't it? The clearances, that they weren't going far away. It was just almost desperation towards the end. Van Dijk was up front. I think Salah had that kind of volley from close range, which he absolutely spooned up. It looked like a clearance, but if he had got a better connection on that,
was a chance.
That they could have scored. And Kelleher giving away the corner. Oh no.
If they'd have scored from that, oh my God, my head would have been on Mars.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. I couldn't watch. Yeah, like you say, I get anxious about these things.
I another aspect of it, and we'll talk about some players individually of the players we've not spoken about yet, but the starters and the finishers. I think Jensen coming on, KLP coming on, Rika coming on. There's quite a bit of depth there, and we'll get into the depth because we'll talk about Grimsby a little bit too. But just before that, I think we've mentioned Kayode, who I thought was excellent. Aya again seemed like he was on a mission in that first half, like carrying the ball forward, defending as well. We've mentioned Janelt, we've mentioned Damsgaard. I think they're only going to get better, or specifically Damsgaard is only going to get better. But we are talking about Jordan Henderson every week at this point, but we should talk about him again, I think, because he was again so good, especially in a game like that, coming up against your old club. There's a lot of familiar faces there. Would have been easy to have a stinker, but he didn't. He really didn't.
No, is it time? Is he better than Christian Norgard? I think he's a bit more well-rounded.
Yeah.
I think he does a bit more better than Norgard. Norgard's very good at what he did. It's a shame that actually he's not really getting any minutes at all at Arsenal. But
No.
yeah, he's come into this team and he's settled well, and you can't underestimate his influence. But I feel like it was just another normal game for him. He wasn't any better or any worse than normal. I think it's hard just not to say the same things about him every week.
Yeah.
Which is just a big credit. Good to see him get through 90 minutes again. That's something we've not seen very often from him.
The thing that really interested me was some quotes from Arne Slot that I saw pre-match about how much Ajax are missing Jordan Henderson, or a lot of their pundits are saying Ajax look markedly worse for not having Jordan Henderson in their side, which I didn't know about. It just kind of shows the impact that he had there, and the fact that we're taking Ajax's player. Brentford have taken Ajax's best player from last season, and like it's kind of fever dream stuff. Anyone else have a particularly good game that you want to mention?
Again, I find it hard to separate players in these sorts of games sometimes because it was just good. Everyone was good.
Yeah.
There wasn't anyone on the pitch that had a bad game. I think Kelleher looks more assured week on week. He's not making any of those little mistakes that maybe we saw him make before, apart from giving away the corner, which I didn't need. But no, very, very good. Again, Thiago, week on week, he's becoming really important for us. He's scoring a lot of goals. Could he get 20 a season? Could he match what the likes of Brian got last season? It looks like he can at the moment. And just his all-round game is just better and better. And like I said, all over the team, there's players with potential and there's players who can be really, really good for us. And we got that depth on the bench. Jensen's kind of suiting that last 10 minutes role, where he comes on, often grabs a goal, brings that extra quality when players are tiring. Maybe just a little bit more attacking depth is what we need for certain games. Still haven't seen Reece Nelson. Hopefully we'll see him against Grimsby. But yes, it's all positives at the moment. I think you can't underestimate the average age of that team, taking away Jordan Henderson.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the depth. We'll talk a little bit about Grimsby now. It's going to be interesting tomorrow night to see, some of those fringe players get a run out. KLP, Fab, Rico, Pinnock, Jensen, Nelson, potentially Nunez as well. We talked about it last time. I think Chris Ayer said after the win against West Ham, whether it's our strongest bench since we've been in the Premier League. When you're talking about a game in the League Cup and you can ring the changes, but still have Premier League experience on the pitch in the likes of Fab, KLP, Pinnock, Rico, the narrative going into the season and the narrative around the transfer window, which I still think was a kind of 5 out of 10, but it was that we're a little bit undercooked. When now we've got these players that can come in for a League Cup game and you're excited to see what they can do because they'll all have a point to prove, especially the likes of Fab and Rico, who can't get a game at left back, even though now he's fully fit. Even Pinnock as well. You're looking at it and you're going, we're in a good place for this game. But how, who are you most looking forward to see in terms of Grimsby tomorrow night?
We're in a good place, but I think weirdly this season we've not had the injury crisis that we normally get. I'm not ruling that out happening at some point. Obviously Hickey's out for a short period. Milambo we've lost to an ACL, so we have lost a couple, but everyone's healthy in the main and looking good. What I want to see is a similar sort of amount of changes as we have seen against Villa and Bournemouth. I wouldn't bring more of the likes of Donovan and Konak, who people will be calling for. I wouldn't start them in this one. I think you've got to take it just as seriously as you took those games. It'll be a different game. They'll sit in a low block. We don't have to break down many of those these days. And they'll probably threaten us with long balls and balls into the box and set pieces. Almost a bit like what we do to teams. Yeah. So it's not going to be easy. We've all been here before and we've lost this type of game. I think we need to take it very seriously. I think we need to include the big players on the bench if they're needed, like we have done. It'll be interesting. I think we might see Arthur again, who played against Villa, because I don't think Ayer will play again, having played the last couple of league games. So I think it'll probably be him and Pinnock. Then you're probably looking at Rico Henry left back. Right back to an interesting one as well, given Coyotes probably won't play. He'll probably get a break and Hickey's not quite there. Could KLP play at right back?
Probably maybe better at right back than he is at left back, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and then obviously in the middle, you're probably looking at Onyeka,
Janelt,
Probably,
Jensen, Fab.
probably Janelt, unless they've obviously played longer than expected at the weekend. But yeah, Jensen, Fab, and then it's the front three where you get a bit stuck and you might have to play a couple of players again. But I reckon Dango can play another game. He doesn't normally play. He hasn't played every week this season. With maybe
Nelson.
Dango up front, I'd say, because he has played up front for Bournemouth. With Nelson and Nunes perhaps, and I think that would be a Dixon.
I'd love to see Nunes. I don't know if people will have seen his kind of cameo against QPR. When he comes up, do you see the video when he like dribbles past about 7 players and puts it on a plate for Fab? And I felt sorry for the QPR side, not too sorry, obviously, but the team that we put out was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. We had so many great players in there. Fabio Carvalho scoring 2 for the development team. But yeah, there's a lot of players that will feature tomorrow that I think will go out with a point to prove. Magoma's another one that we've not seen, who played for the development.
Yeah, he's been injured, hasn't he? Yeah. I think there's a lot. I just really need to get across that we do not need to we can't take this lightly. Like, we've got to still take it seriously. We could easily slip up where I think it's the quarterfinal next round if we get through this. So, again, we're in mid-table in the Premier League, going far in the League Cup. There's mirrors towards last season. Please, Keith Andrews, take it seriously, because, we would have had a better chance at Newcastle last season in the quarterfinal if we had actually put out a full side. And I think this is a stage of the competition where you have got to take it really seriously. We've got a nice draw on paper, but we've got to take it seriously. They've beaten Manchester United. They're here because they deserve to be here, and their style won't be a style that I think we'll particularly like playing against.
Yeah, but it goes. Grimsby play football as well. I think they played well against Man United and they scored a couple of good goals, but they're going to add that set piece element to their game, so it's going to be like playing us. But also, we have to be aware that they're a good side in their league and they do like to play football too. But I am so looking forward to this away day, Dan. I cannot wait. Safe trip to all the bees that are going, but this is going to be a proper old school Brentford away day, and I cannot wait for it. The Ealing Road podcast will be back after Grimsby with a full-time show and a Palace preview as well. Remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts around the Liverpool game. Who would you like to see feature against Grimsby tomorrow night? Let us know in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, another 3 points in the bag.
Up the bees.